Are you afraid of this guy? This is Tux. He is the mascot of Linux. And if you've heard of Linux before, but you're a little shy, then stay tuned to Mackie Tech, because we're going to be talking about that as a replacement for Windows 10 and 11. Apologies, I cannot record in the studio today. We're having some construction going on and that's quite noisy. So I'm upstairs in my other office and we're picking up from last week's video where we discussed 3 different options to prepare for Windows 10 end of life. That's going to be next year, October 15th, 2025. Today we're going to be talking about Linux as a 4th option due to popular demand. A lot of my comments in last week's video, thank you very much, were very enthused about me not including Linux as an option, which is certainly reasonable. To be fair, last week's video was catered toward the less than tech savvy, so that's why I decided not to include Linux. So today we're going to talk about using Linux as a viable option. We're going to be talking about how we can test it on a Windows machine, and then we're going to go through installing it and making sure that it runs and kind of going from there. For our testing purposes today, we're going to be using an Intel NUC, which is a mini PC about the size of a book. And it has a 6th generation Intel. So it was, I think I bought it in 2019, something around there. It has Windows 10. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM, a 500 gigabyte SSD hard drive, Wi-Fi 5, and a gigabit LAN. So we're going to be using that as our test bench. Today specifically, we're going to be talking about Linux Mint version 22, known as Wilma, and we're going to be working on the Cinnamon desktop. Now, Mint is probably one of the more popular versions for people that are coming from a Windows environment because it's very similar. There's a lot of other similar Linux distributions. One is Zorin OS, there's also Pop OS, and there's a bunch of different ones. Ubuntu comes to mind. A lot of them are very user-friendly, and I'll link all of the other ones that are viable options in the video description. Linux Mint is very easy to learn with respect to all the support that's out there, all the documentation. There's a lot of user groups that are behind it. Today we're going to be going through that on Mackie Tech. Okay, so here we are on my mini PC. It has the Intel 6th generation processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM. We can see that it has Windows 10 Pro on it. And we also know that we're going to look at if it's supported. And as you can see there, it is not able to run Windows 11. And we're going to get some more details. We're going to click on PC check, or actually we already have that. And we're going to go ahead and see if it can run Windows 11 by clicking here. This PC doesn't currently meet Windows 11 system specifications requirements. TPM 2.0 is not detected, as well as the processor is not an 8th generation processor, or maybe it's not one of the supported processors by Intel. So, not a shock. So we are going to go ahead and use this computer as our test bed for Linux Mint. So in order to do that, we have to get a couple of applications installed on this computer, or rather one installed. We have to also go get an ISO of Linux. So first we're going to go to www.linuxmint.com, and this is the Linux Mint page. You can peruse this and look at the different download options. We're going to go with Linux Mint 22, which it says here is recommended, and that's actually Wilma. That's the latest and greatest. I'll go ahead and I'll leave a link for that in the description. So we'll go ahead and click on the download. You'll also note that there are installation instructions. There's a lot of support for Linux Mint, and probably Linux Mint and Ubuntu are probably the number 1, number 2 supported versions of Linux, or distros of Linux. They're a lot of community support for these. There's a lot of ways to get help, get assistance if you're having any trouble. So we're going to go ahead and click on download. And you can see here that there are different editions. We're going to go with the Cinnamon edition. We'll click on download. And it says the size is 2.7 gigabytes. So make sure that you have a USB jump drive that will accommodate that. And it's going to show us where we can get these from. Go ahead and click on this one here. And see, it's telling me it's going to be Linux Mint. I'll put that on the desktop, that's fine. And then as that is downloading, we're going to get our tried and true friend, Balena Etcher. It's a completely free download. It allows us to flash to a USB disk. Here we have the downloads for Balena Etcher. We're going to get it for Windows x64, x86 installer. Click on the download. And we're going to put that on our desktop. And here it is here. We'll go ahead and double click on that. Put our jump drive in. I'm going to say flash from file. And we're going to go ahead and grab our Linux distro. Select target. We want to make sure that we're selecting our USB disk, or jump drive rather, and that's an 8.05 gig, which is fine. That's exactly what we want. Click on select. Do note that any information that is on here will be completely erased by this process. This sometimes takes 5-10 minutes, depending on the speed. Okay, the Balena Etcher has finished. It took about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and reboot the computer, and we will be right back to see how the testing goes. And as it's restarting, I wanted to remind everybody that we want to make sure that we tell it to boot from the USB drive. So I'm going into my boot manager, select flash storage, which is right there. Yep. And then it's going to go ahead and start booting up. We're going to select our Linux Mint version from the top. Cinnamon 64-bit, that sounds good. And it's going to go ahead and start booting off of the USB disk. And this does take a while. All right, everybody, just a quick update. I was trying to use my mini PC here as the testing bench for the Linux Mint, and I tried it off of the USB drive, as I mentioned. It worked once, and then I tried to boot it up again, and it just stuck at the Linux boot screen, and it didn't work. Tried it a couple times, and it's just not working. So we're going to change gears a little bit here. I got it a couple years ago. It's a Pentium-based Dell, or Windows-based Dell, I should say. It already has a version of Linux Mint on it. It's a previous version than the Wilma that we're using, but it'll do fine for today's purposes of just showing you how to test Linux, regardless of what system is already on it. It works exactly the same way in terms of booting up on a USB. You're able to test it out, and then we'll show what happens when we reboot and the new desktop interface and everything like that. This is basically the desktop, and if we go over here to the left hand side, this is our start menu, and this is very similar to Windows in a sense. You can rearrange anything on here that you want. This is the Firefox web browser that it comes with, but you can certainly install Google Chrome on here if you want to. And here are our system settings. So it's just a little bit, different look, but it has the same feel. You can drag your windows out like this. You can change the date and time, switch to your city, region. We're in Chicago here, so you can mess with all those things. So what we're going to do is we're going to be testing some of our hardware to make sure that everything that we need is being recognized. I'm going to go over to the right, and you can see that we have our printer is already recognized. And this is my my network printer here. And we have our network card is working just fine. If I go to connection settings, you can see that it's working just fine. So that's already there. Okay, and we're gonna go to YouTube, and I can go ahead and launch our Firefox web browser. And we're gonna go to Mackie Tech. Let's play this. This is my last one. Tech, everyone, your home for IT solutions. So yeah, October. So everything works. Printer, internet, sound. What we're going to do real quick is we're going to go into LibreOffice and go into LibreOffice Writer. And we're going to go ahead and do a quick text document. Large. Lazy dog. And we'll make that bigger. And LibreOffice actually comes with Linux Mint. So it's a very good alternative if you're using Office, has a word processor, a spreadsheet, presentation program. So we're gonna print this out, and it has my brother already selected. Click on print, and it is spoiling to the printer. That is working just fine. I don't wanna save it. We'll close this. And we can take a quick gander at what will come with this installation if we choose to move forward. We have our software manager here. This is the software manager. You can get your games off of here, basic Linux games. It has your graphics. We're gonna look at GIMP here, and that's a really good picture editor. Handbrake, which is really good for ripping, if you're into that. Audacity, that's what I was thinking about. FileZilla, we got Discord. Look through this and see the apps that you normally use are accessible. Now that we know that we're comfortable with it, we know it has everything that we want, we can go ahead and install it. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show is that we can also change the desktop background. I can right click on the background and go to display settings, or I'm going to change desktop background. And these are all the different types of settings or backgrounds you can have. Here's some backgrounds that come installed with Wilma. So that's kind of cool. So we can change all those. And right from here I can create a new folder, I can create a new document. I can go back into here and I can click on this to quick, this one to log out. It'll ask you for a default login and account name when you set everything up when you first start using it. If we're in our start menu here, if we want to add calculator to our desktop, which I use a lot, just right click on it and click on add the desktop, and there it is, calculator in all its glory. I can also go back in here, all applications, go down to calculator and go to click to add to panel, and that will add it to this taskbar down here. So let's go ahead and we'll install Linux on this machine. And this computer does have a DVD drive, which is also recognized. So we're going to go ahead and install Linux. Double click on this icon here. You can also reboot it and go back into the mode you were before, where it's asking you how you want to boot. And there's actually an option that says install, so you can do it that way too. So here we go. We're going to go with, this is the installer welcome, and it's going to ask us for our preferred language. We're going to select English and click on continue. And then it's going to ask us what type of keyboard we want, and we're going to stick with US English. And then it's going to ask us if we want to install any type of multimedia codecs. I'm going to go ahead and say yeah. Okay, so now we have a couple of options. It's telling us that we have an existing version, which is Linux Mint 2.1 Virginia, and we can erase it and then reinstall that, or we can install Linux Mint alongside of our pre-existing Linux installation. It's going to be like a dual boot situation, or we can completely erase the existing installation and install Linux Mint. Now, obviously, if you have Windows, it's going to tell you that you have Windows, and it's going to give you options to dual boot Windows or dual boot another OS you happen to have on here. I wouldn't recommend that, just because Linux and Windows in terms of dual booting, I've had it work before, but I have had a lot of challenges with it before because the boot record can get messed up on Windows, and sometimes they don't play very well together. I especially wouldn't want to do it on an older computer like this one. So I'm going to go ahead and erase disk and install Linux Mint. And what that's going to do is that's going to completely wipe the hard drive on here. Erase disk and install Linux Mint, and click on continue. And I don't want it on, I have another hard drive in there. I want to put it on my SSD. Okay, it's telling me that there's a couple different partitions. That's fine, I don't really care. Go ahead and install that. And it's asking me again, do you want to write changes? So it does make certain partitions for itself when it installs Linux for its different types of the way it organizes the hard drive. So I'll go ahead and click on continue. And it's asking me where I'm at. I'm in Chicago. That's fine. Click continue. And it's going to ask me for my name. I'm going to put in Mackie Tech. Computer name, Optiplex. That's fine. Password. Continue. Okay, so it's going to do some work on the hard drive. So now it's asking us to restart. It is saying that we can continue in the test mode here if we want, but any changes that we make to the desktop, as we did with the shortcuts and documents, whatnot, are not going to be saved. So we're done testing it. So we'll click on restart. All right, and here we are back at the new Linux Mint. And this is installed on the computer. And we have our printer as we did before. We have our network connection already established. And we have our start menu over here. Go to our software manager. Oh, Ramina, this is a good remote desktop program that I like to do, so we'll install that. I'm going to drag that to my desktop. And we're going to RDP into this is actually a virtual computer that I have. I gotta mess with the resolution so I can see it better, but that's Windows 11 on a virtual machine that I have on my Proxmox that I use for a lot of my coding work. Anyway, that's Ramina. And as we mentioned before, we do have LibreOffice, and we already looked at Writer. We also have Calculate, which is a very nifty spreadsheet. And it's very handy. And you know, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. It's the same, basically the same thing as Excel. It has the same, you know, functionality in it. So I like it quite a bit. And we can go up here in File and go to Save As, and we can go to the spreadsheet format. We can go to Excel, XLS, which is the new format for M365, or a template. So we can do any of that. We can certainly open up an Excel document within here. So it's very handy. And we also have, as we saw here, we have the Impress, which is the presentation program. We have a calendar. All right, so let's say that we want to, let's get a new browser on here real quick. So we'll go to Chrome, download. Yep, Debian. Okay. Let's put that on the desktop. I'm not going to sign in right now. So this is the Chrome. And yeah, new browser. So easy peasy. I think that's going to wrap it up for this. But yeah, I mean, once you use it a little bit and monkey with it a little bit, it's very, very easy. So hopefully that helps. So option 4, as a way to prepare for Windows 10 end of life, installing Linux is certainly a viable option. In my case, I assumed that my mini PC would work, and in the end it just didn't have the resources to run it. I would like to know what other versions you guys are into, if you guys are more of a Pop! OS, if you're on the Arch Linux side. I would like to know what your daily driver is if it's Linux and what you're using it for. If you're using it for any type of video decoding or video editing or gaming, or what's your favorite pleasure. So sound off in the comments below, and while you're down there, please give this video a like and subscribe to Mackie Tech if you haven't done so already, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again for watching.